Hi everyone, welcome to Sanyii Academy. This is Nagasa from this channel, and today I'm going to teach moral and citizenship education, lesson 5. If you are new for this channel, please start by subscribing and liking the video. And if you're already member to Sanyii Academy, start by liking, sharing, and commenting on the video. This is a lot to me. It can help me grow with my channel. And you can also follow this academy through social media links that are listed on this platform. Having said this, directly I proceed to today's lesson, which is about deontological ethics or the non-consequentialist ethical theory. In the previous time, we started to talk about teleological ethics, which is a consequentialist ethical theory that emphasizes on the end product or the consequence of an action to decide and determine the morality and immorality of human action. On the other hand, we have also seen some subcategories or some sub-theoretical frameworks that are there to indicate the end justify the means principle. And that was the consequentialist theoretical framework to deal with ethics or to understand ethical thinking. And today we are going to look at deontological ethics, which is the complete opposite of utilitarianism. What is meant by deontology? What does deontological ethics mean? And what is the central concern of this theoretical issue or framework to help us understand about ethics, the rightness and wrongness of human action? So in this lesson, we are going to talk about deontological ethics. It is central thesis or argument, and also some of the important points that we need to understand to prove the goal of this deontological ethic. Deontological moral theory is the opposite of utilitarianism in its argument. It is referred as the means justifies the end. Utilitarianism, or generally teleological ethics, depends on the principle the end justify the means. Whatever the means you use is not the concern of utilitarianism or teleological ethics. Rather, if the consequence of that action is right, good, and beneficial, then the way it was done, the means it used to conduct that action is right or appropriate. Coming to this spectrum, deontological ethics argue that the means justify the end. This is to indicate the emphasis of deontological ethics is not on the end, rather on the means, the instrument, the way, the principle, the motive that you use to act that particular action. This is a matter. The rightness or wrongness of an action is determined with the reference to formal rules of conduct rather than consequences or result of an action. The emphasis of deontological ethics is not on the end, not on the result or the consequence. It is on the means that we use, the rules that we follow, the duty that we are expected to fulfill. Otherwise, the rightness and wrongness of the action is subject to this point. And we cannot do good action by focusing only on the end. Rather, we have to focus on the means. It is an emphasis on the intentions, the means, intention, why you do the action, the motives, what motivated you to do the action, the moral principle that you adhere to when performing that action, or the performance of the duty that you are expected to fulfill than the result that you are expecting. The consequence is not in question here. It is not the target of this theoretical framework. It is not on the end product or the result of that action that the theory emphasizes. Rather, it focuses on the means, the motives, the interest that you have used as a reason and ground to act that action. Deontological ethics is a duty based theory. That means it is a theory that focuses on a person's duty, whether that person fulfilled the duty that he is expected to discharge or not. The consequences of our action have nothing to do with their rightness or wrongness. Rather, the emphasis is the means, the rightness and wrongness of the means you use to conduct that particular action, which determines the rightness and wrongness of the action. If you are there to fulfill your duty and the motive and the principles that you follow are good enough, then the action is right or appropriate. But if it opposes, then it is not right. It is not acceptable. From the perspective of performance of one's own duty, because duty is a principle of these deontological ethics, Samuel Pufendorf, a 17th century German philosopher, classified dozens of duties under three headings, under three categories. These are very basic. According to him, we as a humans have these three duties which can also be interpreted or further categorized into different duties. There are three headings that he put, three duties that we have as a human. That is duty to God, duty to oneself, and duty to others. So these are major duty categories that we have to look into to discharge our duty and also fulfill the deontological requirement to make our action right and acceptable. Let us see each duties one after the other so as to get more understanding about those duties. Number one is duty towards God. Duties towards God. There are two kinds of duty that we see here. Number one is a theoretical duty to know the existence and nature of God. We have the duty to theoretically know God and his existence, as well as his nature, attributes, likes and his dislikes. So a person is responsible to theoretically know God's existence and about his attributes, nature's characters. And the second duty under this heading is you have to put those knowledge, the knowledge about God's existence and nature, into practice by inwardly and outwardly worship Him. You have the responsibility, you have the duty to put those knowledge, those understanding about God's existence and his attributes, his knowledge, his character, his nature. So a person has to know these two duties and perform them practically to adhere to those duties. This is what duty to God is all about, according to Samuel Pufendorf. The second duty category is duty to oneself. This is a duty that you have as a person towards yourself. We have a duty to look after our own self for the betterment of our life. And he says this duty has two sorts or two kinds. Number one is duty of the soul. This means developing one's own skills and talents. You have the duty to improve your soul. Theologically, the soul has three natures. The first nature is the soul has the nature of knowing, a need of knowledge, the capacity and the ability to know. The second is the nature of will. Our soul, human soul, had a will to do or not to do whatever it needs to do. The third one is the nature of feeling. The soul has these three natures. So, from this perspective, you have the duty to provide your soul with the skill and knowledge and develop the talent that you have. It should be put into practice. It should be brought to life. And that talent, that skill and knowledge has to be achieved. And constantly, you have to do that in your life. You have to improve your soul in terms of knowledge, in terms of skill, in terms of talents, and even emotionally. And the second one is duty of the body. There is a difference between the soul and the body. The body is the physical object, the physical material that we have, the flesh. So a person has no right to harm his body through gluttony and drunkenness and not killing oneself. As a person, since you are not the creator of your body, you have no right to harm your body. But we see people killing or committing suicide, killing themselves, or we see people suffering their body or just exposing themselves to suffering and some other pains. That is completely wrong according to him, because we have the duty to protect our body from harming by our own choice and desires. You don't have to drink too much and kill yourself. You don't have to mishandle your body. In even eating and drinking too much is bad. That is what harm your body. You see people eating too much and becoming overweighted. They're overweighted and becoming the victim of obesity. That is not performing, that comes from not performing one's own duty towards one's own body. So you have to protect your body, you have to preserve it from harm, and also you have to enjoy and see the beauty that was given to you by your body. And the third type of duty that Samuel Pufendorf has outlined is duty towards others. These are of two sorts. That means there are absolute duties and there are conditional duties. These duties have to be fulfilled in order to keep our interaction and relationship with the people we always contact. So, as a person, you have to have this sort of duty because it could help you improve your relationship and even achievement, because humans are social animal. That means they have interactions. Without social life, we cannot even handle a thing. So that is why we are expected to pay attention to duty towards others. These are absolute duties which are universally binding on people, and conditional duties which are the result of contracts between people. Absolute duties are of three sorts. Number one, because these are universal principles according to this theory, we have to avoid wronging others. You have to avoid wronging others. You have to avoid or dehumanizing people. You have to treat them as equals. You have to promote the good of the people. So these are universally binding interests of that or duties that a person has to discharge towards others under the umbrella of absolute duties. And the second part of this duty towards others category is conditional duties. Conditional duties are the result of agreement, or contract between peoples. Conditional duties involves various types of agreements, the principal one of which is the duty to keep one's promises. So you are responsible to fulfill these duties, conditional duties, as much as you are capable of doing it. Otherwise, you can break it. So this is conditional duty. So generally, Samuel has outlined these three categories of duty that a person has to fulfill and perform in order to bring the best out perform this, and which is also part of the deontological ethical theory, which is based on the duty thesis. And the second type of theory that is closely connected to this deontological ethics is the divine command theory. The divine command theory was mostly propagated by religious theorists, religious scholars, and that has its own thesis towards the rightness and wrongness of an action that a person is required to perform in his or her action in everyday life. According to the divine command theory, ethical principles are simply the commands of God. They say ethical principles are given by God. Most of the time, they attach and ascribe this kind of argument to the Ten Commandments, which were given to the Israelite peoples when they were just getting out of the land of Egypt to the land of Canaan. And it says they derive their validity from God's commanding them. God command these ethical principles and they mean commanded by God. They are commanded by God and person is responsible to perform them. God require persons, people to perform those duties or fulfill those principles. They say without God, there would be no universally valid morality. That means God is a source of all moral principles, which are there to guide humans to act in performance of the duty. So we can analyze the divine command theory into three separate theses. There are three separate theses that forms to the argument of this divine theory. The first argument is morality, that is rightness and wrongness, originates with God. Number one premises or argument is morality originates from God. What is right and what is wrong is given by God. So God is the source of morality. The second argument is moral rightness simply means willed by God, and moral wrongness means being against the will of God. So, if morality is originated from God, then morally right action is the action which is willed by God, and morally wrong action is the action which is against the will of God. The third argument is because morality essentially is based on the divine will, not on independently existing reasons for action, human mind or human reason, no further reasons for actions are necessary. If God is the source of morality, any human reason is not required to define and establish this kind of argument. Therefore, there is no room for human reason to indicate whether certain action is right or wrong, or there is no argument against those established set of principles and given by God. So this is the argument they forward. There are modified versions of the divine command theory that drop or qualify one or more of these three theses that we have seen, but the strongest form includes all the three assertions. The strongest form of divine command theory argument include those three arguments, three theses that we have seen. We can characterize that position thusly or using this case. Necessarily for any person S and for all actors A, if A is forbidden or required of S, then God command that not A or A for S. Likewise, if A is permitted for S, then God has commanded neither A nor not A for S. Bringing out the implication of this, we may list for propositions. For any person S and for all actors A, if A is forbidden for S, then God did not command A for S. By the way, this one is presented in terms of human reason, not command of God. So if God does not require us to have a, then it is not a, is commanded for God. So likewise, if A is permitted for us by human decision, then God has commanded neither A or not A for us, but humans have done it. Bringing out these implications for this, we may list four propositions. Number one, proposition number one, Act A is wrong if and only if it is contrary to the command of God. You might need a person to do Act A, but if that action is contrary to the will of God, action A is wrong. The second proposition, Act A is right or required if and only if it is commanded by God. If you need a person S to do A and that is willed by God, then that action is right. Proposition number three, Act A is morally permissible if and only if it is permitted by the command of God. So, a person should know that Act A is morally permissible if it is willed by God. Otherwise, that action is not permitted by God. So, if a person performs the action which is not permitted or required by God, Act A is morally wrong. So, from this perspective, they say if there is no God, then nothing is ethically wrong, required, or permitted. This is all to prove that God is the source of ethical principles and moral actions have to be guided by the will of God. Divine command theory is summarized that morality not only originates with God, but moral rightness simply means willed by God, and moral wrongness means being against the will of God. We have seen that. An act is right if permitted by the will of God, and an act is wrong if it is being against the will of God. So this is the baseline and the foundation of divine command theory. Morality essentially is based on divine will, not on independently existing reasons for actions, not human reason. No further reasons for action are necessary. So, according to this theory, every moral principles are given by God, and these are the interpretation of the will of God. These are the direct representation of the will of God. So, without God, we have moral nihilism, moral wrongness, or our moral right is, or thinking is not that much convincing or morally unacceptable. If there is no God, then nothing is ethically wrong, required, or permitted. This is what this divine command theory says. But there are also other theorists who have figured out the problems with the divine command theory. There are two problems that they have just pointed out. There are two problems with the divine command theory that need to be faced by those who hold it. Divine command theory would seem to make the attribution of goodness to God. This attribution is given to God. When we say God is good, we think we are ascribing property to God. But if good is simply means what God commands or wills, then we are not attributing any property to God. So there is a confusion between attributing good to the God and God to the good. So this is some controversy. The statement God is good is merely means God does whatever he wills to do and does not pay attention to human interest. Generally, today we have seen about deontological ethics and divine command theory, each having their own assertions, each having their own argument. What is the rightness and wrongness of an action? Deontological ethics argue that the means justify the end. So, rightness and wrongness of human action is determined by the motivations, by the means, principles, and the performance of duty, not by the result. Whereas divine command theory says moral rightness and wrongness or moral principles are originated from God's will, so everyone has to conform to the will of God. This is all about for today. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share this video so as to help other people access this channel, and also hit the notification bell to get notified every time new video arrives on Sanyii Academy. Until next time, bye bye. God bless you.